Pokémon is too big to fail. It's a machine churning along, rattling, heaving thick, murky clouds of exhaust, but still managing to go about its task, producing best-selling children's games time and time and time again. Make no mistake, the machine is barely standing. With each release, a piece of it falls off and it's oxidized to such an advanced state that no one can tell which part of the machine is which. But despite all this, it's very good at what it does. And that's because it's made to do one thing and one thing only: make Pokémon. It's like Kanye West or J.K. Rowling, unyielding triumphs of capitalism, where no matter what heinous thing these people say or do, or how badly they fail, they will always continue to succeed and be promoted and have fans because all they have to do is exist to keep rising upward. Pokemon is obviously not as extreme as those two goofballs, but the moment a new Pokemon game is announced, the machine belches to a start. Dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of videos raking in millions of views, all serving to talk about Pokemon. The next Pokemon, the newest Pokemon, the biggest Pokemon, the widest Pokemon, open world Pokemon. With all this talk, it becomes easy to ignore minor things like a bad frame rate in the announced trailer because, come on, it's Pokemon, and it's just a frame dip in a trailer, right? I've wanted Pokemon to be living and breathing and actually attack you for it. Look at the fucking frame rate, though. Look at the Chimchar, right?
Even in this era,
there's like
wild Pokemon can be caught with Pokeballs.
That Chimchar's moving at like 10 frames per second, dude. There's one Pokemon on the screen, and it's about 15 feet away from you, and it's moving at 2 frames per second. How bad could the final game really be? It's important to note that we didn't get here by accident. Pokemon has been on this route for a long time, and I've been one of the few voices that I've seen calling it out. But to anyone thinking I'm just doing this because I'm a hater or because it's cool or edgy to hate the popular thing, I want to state outright that 1, I love Pokemon, and I want more than anything for Game Freak or somebody to release a mainline Pokemon game that finally recaptures the magic that made me love the series in the first place. I'm not going to list every Pokemon game I've played. I will show off my Pokemon Sun and Moon figures though, because they're tight as fuck. But being a fan of something isn't about showing off bona fides or spouting off a bunch of random facts. As I get older, I realize Pokemon will always be a part of me. Despite my lack of interest in Scarlet and Violet, I couldn't go without picking up a game this generation because I needed to see. I needed to know if I would find that piece of my mind that fell into the Pokemon universe decades ago and never came back out. But 2, yes, part of the purpose of a video like this is to bash Pokemon because it's popular. But that's not the sole reason. I didn't just pull a random popular game out of a hat. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are embarrassing. Like, I feel genuinely embarrassed for having played them. But if everyone were saying that, it would be boring. I don't care about review scores, critic or user reviews because I don't think they always accurately reflect the quality of a game. They can reflect the sentiment of a general population of people, but that sentiment is rarely consistent from platform to platform or time period to time period, as different cultures tend to emerge at different times and places surrounding a piece of art. Not to mention, with digital updates and whatnot, it's really hard to get a sense of where the sentiment was at any given point in time. I do, though, think that there's some value in consolidating my feelings and putting them out there in a way that others can relate to or at least digest and understand. So I will do just that. In my past videos, I got very mad at the games, but for at least part of the thing, I want to take aim at the machine. A new Pokemon game comes out, then bam, 1 to 10 minute videos come bursting from the algorithmic seams talking about the cool new feature, or a moment with the new cute waifu or husbando, or the top 10 things you need to know before starting your new adventure. Not to mention Let's Plays and the competitive scene and all this other stuff. These videos present an uncritical and often glowing look into the game, even in the best case scenario where video is wholly neutral, not objective, but neutral. The video will still serve as an advertisement, getting people emotionally invested in the brand new Pokemon adventure. To an extent, this is just YouTube. To another extent, this is the internet. Once you get big enough, you can hardly speak without a million clips of the things you say being cut up and reproduced all over the web to serve someone's bottom line. And I kind of hate it, but I'm also just a misanthrope, so you know, that's me. My unique problem, and one that makes me rather bitter, I'm sure, is that I'm competing with these larger videos in a sense. My opinion is by default considered less valuable because of the relative lack of people looking at me. So when someone releases a minute-long video that's just literally a snippet of some dialogue from the game with no commentary or real context, and that video gets 1 million views, a meaningful critique of the game has to climb that much higher to reach anyone. The default sentiment is that Pokemon is good because it's Pokemon, so you're fighting an uphill battle to express anything contrary to that. I haven't watched any videos about Scarlet and Violet except for the launch trailer, but based on my algorithmic preferences, what I'm generally seeing is haha funny bugs and the same borderline promotional videos that I always see. And judging from reactions to games like Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, Fallout 4, and hell, even Skyrim, it may just take a while for the Overton window to shift and the generally acceptable opinion to skew in a different direction. In a grand sense, I think that's what's happening with the Pokemon franchise as a whole. Maybe my problem is that I'm just impatient. Pokemon Let's Go had some polish issues, but those largely went under the radar because the game underneath was solid enough. And hey, it's Pokemon, right? And it was a fresh take on a tired old formula. Pokemon Sword and Shield had some insane polish issues, including, but not limited to, that fucking pixel artifact on the flying taxi loading screen. And yes, I will be mentioning that again later, but hey, it's Pokemon, right? The game underneath is solid enough, and the wild area and the max raids are a fresh take on the tired old formula. Brilliant Diamond and Radiant Pearl or whatever the fuck I never played, so I wouldn't feel comfortable talking about them too extensively in this video, but I'd recommend YouTuber Acoustic Harmonia's video on the issues with those games. Pokemon Arceus had polish issues and bugs galore. Bad AI, Pokemon spawning in weird places, shitty frame rates and draw distances, but the game underneath was solid enough, and hey, it's Pokemon, right? The open world and action RPG systems are a fresh take on the tired old formula. But then you play Pokemon Shield and you're like, oh, this is the future. This is the future of Pokemon, and this is not good. I think my point here is pretty clear. When does "it's still Pokemon" stop being an adequate excuse? How minuscule do the changes have to be from game to game before we realize the problems and lack of ambition are piling up faster than Game Freak or Nintendo can contend with? In this year alone, we've had great releases that far outshine anything a Pokemon game has done in the last several generations. And how long does it have to be before we get a Pokemon game that isn't just a familiar comfort, but that truly blows our minds or makes us cry like God of War, Red Dead Redemption 2, Breath of the Wild, The Last of Us, Metal Gear Solid 5, Disco Elysium, Persona 5? If your counter is to say that Pokemon will never be like one of those games, my question is why? They have the money. They sold 10 million copies with this piece of shit. They can literally buy all the talent they need. But Pokemon exists in a space where it's simply allowed and expected to be lower quality by default. When I look at Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. I'm truly saddened that the series that once gave me so much joy seems downright apathetic and unwilling to try any harder than it needs to. It's trend chasing, it's inept, and it's complacent. And just to be clear, Pokémon Scarlet and Violet's problems go far beyond some funny glitches or lack of polish. Cyberpunk 2077 was a decent game crippled by bugs and polish issues, or should I say Polish issues. Am I right? Stay on script, come on. Let's do this. The game underneath was solid and even great at times. Same for like Red Dead Redemption 1. My worry with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is that the glitches will get too much attention. That people will think once those are sorted out, the games are suddenly fantastic. And I hate the idea that the foundation of Scarlet and Violet is good despite the technical performance. Guys, we've been here before. Maybe I just need to keep screaming into the void, telling everyone I can that these games are rotten from the inside out, infected with a virus which can only be called good enough syndrome. This video will not be all about the glitches or the frame rate. I will be highlighting some I came across, mostly because they're funny as heck. But before I get to any of that, I want to flip this critique on its head and talk about the ending of the game first. For context, I played through Pokemon Violet with 2 different characters, completing some of the endgame stuff only with the second character. I've criticized the open worlds of Sword and Shield and of Arceus in the past for being bland, featureless wastelands with nothing interesting to do and even less interesting to find. For the most part, Pokemon Violet continues in that trend. Even things that once held some significance, like TMs, have been reduced to mere one-use consumables, again making the rush of finding one fleeting and eventually meaningless, subsumed into the unremarkable blur of the open quotes adventure in this Pokemon experience. But there is one point where the game completely shifts. Where you could mount your ride Pokemon, you no longer can. Where you could once set up picnics to rest, you no longer do. Where you would find trainers to battle, you no longer will. Where you were traveling alone, you no longer are. Let me introduce you to Area 0. Without a doubt, the player's first emergence into Area 0 was the coolest part of the entire game. I've spoken recently about the importance of grandeur in a game world, the sense of mystery or intrigue that makes a player feel part of something larger and perhaps inscrutable. The force that, through sheer wonder, compels a player to explore, to want to learn more. Area 0 is the only place in this world I felt had that sense of grandeur, and it's brimming with it, from the music to the oblong cliffs to the crystalline caverns beneath, to the unusual Pokemon, to the way that the light cascades over the hills and cliffs. This map is awesome. I was floored when I first found it. And even though there's still nothing really interesting to find and it's plagued with a lot of the same issues of the larger game, the map design alone compelled me to run around and explore its reaches even after beating the game. But it's not just the map design that makes this part of the game so incredible. I cannot overstate how, in both playthroughs, getting to this point made me feel like I was in an entirely different game. None of the other maps look like this. None of the game music sounds like this. Suddenly you have party members and they talk to each other in gameplay. And the characterization was actually compelling. I wanted to hear, or read I guess, what these characters had to say. Part of me felt like I was in Dragon Age Origins or Persona or Final Fantasy, playing through a thoroughly magical experience in a grand and mysterious world in the presence of characters I really liked and wanted to learn more about. It still has its problems. Like the fact that picking up some items covers the text so you can't see what the characters are saying, or that getting into a battle completely interrupts the dialogue and I don't think you can get it to trigger again, or the fact that when the dialogue is up, you can't send out your Pokemon or lock onto anything despite the fact that you can still trigger battles. These really reek of the same short-sightedness that the franchise as a whole has been suffering from since Sword and Shield, but the worst aspect of this otherwise incredible moment is something I haven't taken issue with in any other Pokemon game up to this point. There is no voice acting. This isn't something I've really spoken about with other Pokemon games because frankly, I didn't think it was that big of a problem. But with Arceus, as the story began to seriously drag, it became obvious that some amount of voice acting would have given the narrative some much needed punch and energy. This game, Pokemon Violet, demands voice acting. It is an actual crime that characters this colorful, with designs this cute, don't have voice acting.
Kick back, relax, and enjoy this last track. Turn it up for a great rattling good time. When I'm on the mic, even the dead rise up. DJ G-Rave over there sure feeling it.
Miss Noelle, there is something that I would very much like to ask your help with. I hear rumors of an incredibly sweet condiment that exists somewhere in the Paldea region. I absolutely must experience that ambrosial sweetness for myself. You are the only one who knows of my insatiable sweet tooth. Thus, I have no one else I can turn to for help in this matter.
Come on, bud. Eat up. It's gonna make you all better, I promise. Noelle and I, we really did our best to get this for you. We're gonna play with your favorite ball as much as you want. You know? Just like we used to. Please, get better. That's all I want, really.
It would have been truly magical to be running around the Area Zero map and then hear these three characters, Arven, Penny, and Nimona, who I actually really like, start talking to each other with Dragon Age Origins style sass and personality to learn more about each other. And it would mean I can focus on the screen in front of me rather than looking down to read what the characters are saying. I'll go even further. This experience should have been the entire game. None of this is built up over the previous 20 to 25 hours. In fact, up until this point, there is really no plot in the game at all. And with the new picnic mechanic and the school setting, it seems ripe for more party-based gameplay where you can sit down with these characters, eat sandwiches with them, play with their Pokemon, learn more about them through dialogue trees. Maybe they could even catch their own Pokemon as you journey with them, and you can trade with them as the game progresses. And as you all adventure, they could send out their own Pokemon to engage in multi-battles or just cheer you on to grant you stat boosts or other help during difficult situations. Another symptom of the good enough syndrome is this. The characters who follow you in Area Zero mention helping you out in battle, but aside from like 5 scripted battles, they don't help you. They just run around and don't even throw out their Pokemon when you throw out yours. There seems to be a real reluctance at Game Freak, an indescribable fear of truly rocking the boat, of truly taking that extra step. With Area Zero, they did something incredible. They made me feel so close to grasping that Pokemon magic again, but they couldn't seal the deal. They failed or refused to take the concept any further, and as a result, the power of this great moment starts to wane. It starts to feel like it's just good enough. Glitches are important to talk about, but because of the shock value of a glitch and the way they can interfere with an experience, I think they hold a disproportionate amount of power when any given game is being discussed. A game can be pretty good while being riddled with glitches. Take release day Cyberpunk 2077 for instance. A game can even be amazing and absolutely crippled by glitches like Fallout New Vegas. A game can be awful but relatively glitch-free like Final Fantasy XIII. And each player's experience is different, both with the game as a whole and the potential glitches within it. To defenders of the Pokémon games, these glitches might seem minor or like nitpicks, but each glitchy experience contributes to a snowball that begins to overshadow the entire game experience after a certain point. Plus, the nature of the glitches, what was allowed to slip through, can kind of give you insight into the development mindset of the people making the decisions at Game Freak or Nintendo. I want to highlight a few glitches and oddities in Pokémon Violet because I don't think the glitches make the game bad. As I pointed out, at the end of the day, it's a Pokémon game, so at worst, it's bland and unambitious, but built on a fairly solid and timeless foundation. But the lack of polish in this game is truly astounding. It may even put Sonic Frontiers to shame. I need to start off with a disclaimer about the graphics you're seeing. I played this game through on the Switch, obviously, and my Switch has begun to show signs of a dying graphics card, with certain textures shooting upward in random spikes here and there. The issue can be caused by various things, but a dying graphics card is the most likely culprit. There are times when I would see similar looking spikes in Violet, and also this awful flashing with some of the background textures completely disappearing for a few frames as the game loads in different levels of detail. Now, maybe I'm naive, but I don't want to believe any company would release a game with as much graphical rot as this. So part of me believes that maybe my graphics card is to blame for some of the more intense issues. I did see similar flashing in Sonic Frontiers. However, I didn't see the same texture spiking, and I haven't seen any of these issues in any other game. So I don't know. I'd have to look at other people's gameplay, which I'm trying to avoid for now. All this is to say that the game might not be as hideous as it seems from my footage. I also don't think this game looks all that bad. I think I prefer Sword and Shield's graphical style overall. I don't like the semi-realistic textures on some of the Pokemon. Like, look what they did to my boy Sudowoodo. Look what they did to my boy. Also, it's nice that the hair seems to have bones in it now, so they can have hair physics and apparently like actual physics for some of the gameplay, even if it does look a little uncanny at times. But all in all, this game looks decent from up close. From far away, in a static shot, it's a mixed bag. While moving, it's horrendous. This game struggles to get a steady 30 FPS ever. Generally, it runs at a very unstable, like 15 FPS, maybe that's generous. There are frequent frame dips which make the controls feel disgustingly unresponsive at times. The draw distance is awful, truly awful. And a lot of the game is based on collectible hunting, you know, the Pokemon and other stuff, which means you often have to be very close to the thing you're looking for to know if it even exists. I talked about this before in my Arceus and Sword and Shield videos. They need to get better draw distances. I want to be able to see a fucking Snorlax from a mile away. It's hard to feel compelled to go and explore if I can't see what I'm going to be getting to when I get there. And by now, you've all seen the awful frame rates for background characters, or like windmills. You know, the thing I called out months ago when they dropped the announced trailer. Arceus, this big open world extravaganza, just came out. You can't tell me they're not rushing this shit. You can see frame rate dips in the fucking trailer. Again! The weirdest thing about it is how inconsistent it is. Sometimes background characters run at a full 30 FPS. These boulders that this bombardier is dropping seem to be running at a full 60 FPS. I don't even know what's going on here. But this isn't even what I wanted to focus on. The first glitch I found in this game is one that's so laughably bad in any AAA title that I don't know how anyone at Nintendo allowed this to be released. If you hold down the lock-on button, you get this nice semi-over-the-shoulder camera view. Over-the-shoulder cameras are my favorite perspective, so I was automatically liking this. But if you then run against literally any wall, the camera will clip outside of the map. If you literally run, but if you But if you run against literally any wall, the camera will clip. Come on, that's so funny. That's so stupid. How is your game this broken? But if you then run against literally any wall, the camera will clip outside the map. So you can see geometry, you can see cool map design elements, you can see a duplicate earthworm Pokemon. It's like an episode of Boundary Break over here. You can even see the Pokemon who spawn outside the map or inside mountains, which happens way more often than you might think. Now, look, I get it. In the game I made on Dream's PS4, my frame rate is bad. My camera clips out of bounds, so maybe I'm just a big old hypocrite. But this infantilization of Game Freak as some tiny indie darling incapable of running with the big boys is just silly. I don't know how to code. I don't know the ins and outs of the Dreams engine. My game runs like shit because I'm a dumbass who is scrambling to put together something that worked, something I was passionate in, even if the talent wasn't there. But there's no reason a game released by Game Freak should have a glitch this easy to pull off present in it at release. This is alpha and beta shit. Here's another thing that's truly fascinating to me, something that boggled my mind during the entirety of both of my playthroughs, something which demonstrates the totality of the apathy on display by the people who called the shots with this game. In certain maps, you'll find these Pokeballs stuck in the ground. They seem innocuous enough at first. My first playthrough, I thought they were just neat design features to show off the power level of any given gym that I went to. Some NPC mentions,
This gym is definitely Ultra Ball level.
and you can take on gyms in any order, so I assumed that seeing an Ultra Ball in the floor reflected the level of each gym. This is also the result of a glitch which affected the way I experienced my first playthrough, which I'll talk about later. So cool, Pokeball in the floor is a neat little design choice. It's subtle, but effective. Except, then you start to notice the Pokeballs in other places. Your dorm room, the school entrance, almost any significant indoors location, and it doesn't make as much sense in those places. Still, it's easy enough to write off as a minor design choice and move on, right? Except, this isn't a design choice. It's a technical oversight that is so baffling to me. I have no idea how this game ever made it out of the alpha stage. These Pokeballs are not supposed to be here. I think these Pokeballs are the stored 3D models for the balls you can throw out while exploring the open world. Or it's the stored 3D model of the Pokeball that shows up when you gesture with the Pokeball. But this gets even more interesting. I think the Pokeball model is called to that point of any given map. If it doesn't show up in the map, you can make it show up by going into your Pokemon menu and just switching back and forth between your lead Pokemon until you get a Pokemon that makes the ball show up. I think the point that the ball shows up in is probably the origin point of the map, or the 000 coordinate. If you go in your Pokemon menu and change your lead Pokemon, you'll notice the Pokeball changes to correspond to the kind of ball your lead Pokemon is in. So that solves part of the mystery of the ball, but here's the cool thing. Anytime the game needs to load in a 3D model for the menus, the model is called into that origin point first. So if you say open up the character customization menu or the Pokemon summary screen, for just a few frames, you can see the hollowed out husk of the loaded 3D model appear at the origin point. It's not even a glitch because everything is working as intended. It's not a huge deal, but it is hilarious. And it's the kind of thing that admins who cared simply would not allow to be in their game. An artist, someone who cared about presenting a good and meaningful image to the world, would hide this. There are also other things like the fact that simply raising the camera in the school entrance makes the camera clip out of bounds. It's a level of apathy and carelessness that is embarrassing and low-key disgusts me. This is how little the Pokemon Company thinks of its players. They don't deserve anything more. They're gonna buy, like the brain-dead little sheep they are, 10 million copies. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet take on the aesthetic of being set in a school in, I want to say, Buenos Aires? I don't know for sure. It's just the vibe I get. I could look it up, but fuck it. In any case, the main rival throws out some really forced Spanglish just to hammer that home. Like, I'm from New York. I went to a majority Hispanic high school. I speak some Spanish. This didn't feel like real Spanglish to me. The Spanglish in Cyberpunk or GTA or The Last of Us Part 2 is more convincing. The school setting is very strange because in some ways it serves as an interesting limitation on the game as a whole, and in other ways the writers cared so little about it that they just wrote around it as if the school setting wasn't even a thing. Let's talk about the limitations first. While the school setting allows for a broad range of characters and familiar settings to work with, the player character, in my experience, feels weirdly out of place in a lot of the scenarios. With something like Persona, which I feel served as some degree of inspiration for this setting, although not nearly enough, Joker or you are uniquely suited to forge bonds with those around them, and as a result solve the mysteries of what is going on around the school. But the player character in Violet is just like a really strong Pokemon battler, or more likely a trainer with really strong Pokemon. There's no personal story here which should make any of these teachers or students particularly care about the player character, but they do. It's not an inherent flaw, but the lack of meaningful dialogue choices or like social skills or ways to express any real sense of character or individuality takes away from the punch of what otherwise could have been halfway decent Persona side stories. Speaking of lack of character and individuality, the motto of the school is
Uva Academy, leading the way into the future while valuing our individuality.
But like, the character customization here is the worst it's been in a long time. I've said it once and I'll say it again. I loved little Scottish Eevee with her overpowered Eevee in Pokemon Shield. Despite the lack of meaningful dialogue choices or ways to express personality, I felt like, at least with her outfit and Pokemon, I was able to create a character who wasn't just some blank slate. In Arceus and now in Violet, I could not have cared less for any of the 4 characters I tried to make. Their Pokemon didn't matter, which is the still lingering effect of Dexit, by the way. Their animations didn't matter. I can't customize them anyway. Their backstory didn't matter, and their choices don't matter. And even their clothes don't matter, because so much for expressing individuality, every character wears some variation of the same 4 uniform outfits. Unless you're Team Star, I guess. The writers try to play this off as some cool thing where the students really get to express themselves through hairstyles and accessories, but it's not that. Finally, the game mixes and matches male and female clothing styles so that for the first time in like forever, girls don't get more clothing options than the boys do. And you can customize your character from the start of the game like a real fucking RPG for once. But as with everything in this game, this seeming step forward comes with a major drawback. The drawback being, in this case, that you can't customize your main outfit outside of 4 predetermined styles, and the colors are version specific. You can't customize this uniform at all. Look at Penny. She's wearing a fucking Pokemon branded hoodie. Who even makes these? Adidas? And what, she gets to wear it because she's a genius hacker? Team Star gets to wear their dumb clothes because they used to be bullied and no one did anything about it? I can't even change the upper clothing and lower clothing separately. Can't roll up my sleeves, can't open my jacket or my vest. This is total bullshit and the exact opposite of the direction these games needed to go with customization. Students in the real world like to collect pins and stickers and keychains. Why not some kind of backpack system where you could find Pokemon pins and keychains around the world and place them around your backpack? You can't even dress up your dorm room. What do you mean I can't put up a sexy picture of Cynthia in a bikini or Professor Oak in a jockstrap. Look at Penny's room and then look at the player characters. It's so absurd how little it matters that you have your own room and how that doesn't evolve at all over the course of the game. This doesn't feel like my room. These don't feel like my characters. My first character, Dominic, I made to be the son of a billionaire who's like different from other billionaires. In fact, he's really misunderstood. He's super down to earth and he worked for every dollar he's ever earned. He started 3 multi-million-dollar companies in elementary school with a small loan of $1 million from his parents, and he likes to vacation in Bali, but like, money isn't everything to him. He's all about just like living life and making it on his own. And he's really interested in the crypto space, like really interested, like still holding Dogecoin interested. He thinks Elon Musk is an incredibly smart guy and not suffering a midlife crisis, and Bill Gates is definitely not hiding anything. And he truly believes that NFTs might be the key to solving poverty. But what I find funny about this uniform thing is how the game doesn't even bother to hide that literally every student who goes to this school is rich and pampered. They're all Dominic. There's no Team Skull here, no Marnie making it big out of an abandoned shopping mall. Your rival literally lives in a mansion and pretends it's so not a big deal.
My parents? Normal, I guess. Are you serious? Even I know about your dad. He's on the board of the Rotom Phone Company.
So, Nimona's actually some pampered little princess from a rich family?
No way. That's so not my thing. Though, yeah, I guess you could say mother and father were like hands off, but in a good way. My big sister will probably take over the business, so they pretty much let me do what I want.
Wait, you call them mother and father?
That is some pampered little princess stuff right there.
It's not a remarkable part of her character at all. The story behind Team Star is that there were a bunch of students who rose up to stop rampant bullying when the school turned a blind eye. You don't get to see any of this, of course, and like, it's suggested that the Team Star kids, the ones being bullied, were also rich trust fund babies anyway, so fuck them.
But I don't understand. You're rich. Why act like a filthy, disgusting poor person?
By the time the player character comes around, there is no more bullying, and aside from Team Star, which mostly just amounts to a truancy problem, which doesn't even matter because you get to skip school all the time anyway, everyone is happy all the fucking time. The school, as an organization, is more saccharine and happy-go-lucky than Kingdom fucking Hearts. It's full of a bunch of rich wads from big important families who pretend that meritocracy is real and who never face any negative consequences for their actions or negligence. Imagine Kamoshida in Persona 5 systematically using his power and fame to abuse students and harass and manipulate teenage girls, everyone finding out about it, then, like, nothing happens. Kamoshida leaves, but the school otherwise remains exactly the same. All the same people who let it happen are still in charge, but nothing bad ever happens again. Like, come on, this is a school, not a video game company. This director Clavel is the sketchiest motherfucker imaginable.
Bullying? In my school? I had no idea.
Your response might be to say, come on, Rag, it's a Pokemon game. It's for kids. But like, this isn't even a children's story. It's a child's fantasy. Children's cartoons have more consequences than this shit. Besides, the Pokemon series has touched on deep concepts before. It even does in this game at some points. We've seen Po-Town. We get people visiting the graves of their dead Pokemon. And don't forget the weird world of every Cubone having a dead mother. What's that about? The concept of Persona, but for kids, doesn't mean you have to strip away all the teeth of the narrative and character development. Arvin's story comes close to that and probably is the most compelling through line of the game, followed by Penny's, because I love Penny. She's great. She's an otaku too, budget futaba. She was just gonna binge. Fantastic. Anyway, Arvin's story is about how his famous researcher dad was never around to care for him, and eventually made a cyborg clone of himself. That's not really important right now. It isn't masterfully told or anything, but it's got some great moments. Pokemon can hit those realistic emotional beats if it just tried. My favorite NPC in the school was the nurse, and not just because she's beautiful and incredible and I'm going to marry her, but also because she's one of the few teachers who actually expresses some contention with how the school is run. She's a nurse, but she'd rather be a teacher, and she feels some degree of resentment about that. Then, at the end of her side story, she passes a teaching exam, something we really didn't help her with at all, and then she's just like, but I'm still the nurse for now because there's no space for me to teach. So like, nothing changed. I was a substitute teacher. I've worked in schools. They're bureaucratic nightmares. And this gives me secondhand anger for her sake. Like, girl, you go up to the director or chairwoman or whoever and you demand a class or you get the fuck out. Segueing from the school setting just a bit, I want to talk about the gyms. The first gym I faced was the ice gym, which was the second hardest one. After doing the dumbass minigame you need to do to face the gym leader, this one is particularly bad. I get introduced to Grusha.
My name's Grusha. I'm a snowboarder. Used to be pro, actually. Now I'm a gym leader. I saw you on the slopes. Your skills, yeah, they were pretty cool. But don't let that go to your head. Winter mountains are dangerous. They can throw your life right off course, easy as that. Same thing with Pokémon battles, really. It's always the most dangerous when you're just starting to get the hang of things. Today's not a great day to face me, you know. You're better off giving up. You sure you want to battle me? Still trying to act cool, huh? It's too bad. Well, this is my job now, so don't take what I'm about to do personally. Get ready to feel the icy bite of reality.
Grusha fascinated me at first. I was like, oh, so they're going to really flesh out these gym leaders, aren't they? Maybe after this battle I'll get to go on some quests for Grusha to learn more about him. Each gym leader has a day job, you see, and it starts to feel like some of them don't even really care about the whole gym leading thing. So I was fairly interested to learn more about Grusha and the snowboarding accident that ruined his career. But no, you battle Grusha, you take a photo, and then you kind of forget he exists. The writers and storyboarders and everyone in charge of this thing took the good enough approach. It doesn't need to be deep, it just needs to be. Every side story and cutscene has the vibe of one of those minor Mementos bosses from Persona 5, but in a much worse game. I went through the trouble of taking every school class and maxing out my friendship with every teacher except the guy who wants to check the Pokédex, because fuck you, I'm not catching all the Pokemon in this game, because I assumed, like an idiot, that doing so would unlock me some new school uniform styles to customize my character with. I'll leave it up to you to figure out if I was right or not. I actually like these little side stories. Each teacher has some issue they want you to resolve. Again, it felt like much worse Persona, but there's like no gameplay reason to do these at all. In something like Dragon Age, you talk to your party because you love the characters, but also because you unlock new skills and buffs through their dialogue and personal quests. In Persona, you unlock new skills and the entire game is on a very strict time limit, meaning every time you choose to hang out or not, you're making a choice that matters. So the give and take, deciding which characters to prioritize, who to ignore, who to romance, feels like a really fun social sim. You don't get better as a trainer for hanging out with anyone, and only one teacher, the history teacher, actually helps you uncover any unique Pokemon locations. These 4 legendaries I'll talk about later, though I'm pretty sure you can find these on your own as well. The only real reason to hang out with anyone then is because you like them or want to fuck the nurse. And these characters are fine, not bad, not truly memorable. And as far as spending time with them and learning more about them, these scenarios barely scratch the itch. They're all just as enigmatic as when you first meet them. The rest of the game takes place in the treasure hunt. This is when the school lets its students travel out to fuck knows where, doing fuck knows what, for fuck knows how long, and takes absolutely no responsibility for whatever might happen to these poor children while they're out there. They're literally just like, go do whatever. We don't care. Make it a lesson about cherishing something or whatever. I don't give a fuck. Just get out of my sight. This school is a liability nightmare. The director is even feebly like, I almost forgot. Don't fall into that giant fucking crater right behind the school, please. Like, are you serious? The player character never even has to take classes. You can literally just go do the treasure hunt forever and never come back. It's like the writers were just like, you know what, fuck the school thing, I hate the school thing, we're just doing Pokemon again. I'm very wont to offer my own gameplay suggestions, so here we go. Get rid of the treasure hunt. It's stupid and has absolutely nothing to do with the school setting. I know it sounds bold. People are going to be like, but the treasure hunt's the whole point! How else are we going to do gym battles? Look, if you want to make a traditional Pokemon game, just do the big, wide adventure with the gym battles and the Pokemon League is alike. If you want to do Pokemon Academy, make it Pokemon Academy. I avoided most press for this game before it came out, but the idea of an entire Pokemon game set in a school sounds so fucking cool to me. You could do so much with the concept. You study hard in school learning secrets and techniques to give you boosts as a trainer in battle. Maybe each class has a different reward. Some classes reward trainer XP, which boosts your proficiency as a trainer and allows you to tame higher level Pokemon. Some classes teach you special moves, which you can then train your Pokemon to learn. But if you do badly in school, you can also boost your trainer level by raw dogging the Pokemon battles, and you can tame higher level Pokemon by increasing their friendship levels. On a side note, I'm starting to feel like every Pokemon should be a bit rowdy when you first catch them, and rather than gym badges, the friendship system should be used to determine if Pokemon listen to you or not. The higher the level you catch the Pokemon, the harder it is to make them like you. Anyway, between taking part in classes and talking to your teachers, you can find several other students with whom you can explore the campus grounds, running around and talking to each other like in Area 0, to find hidden secrets in forests and grottos and caves where mythical Pokemon reside. Maybe Area 0 is multiple areas, all hidden on the campus grounds, each with its own unique environment and Pokemon and story to tell. It would be like Hogwarts, but without the anti-Semitism. What we have in Scarlet and Violet is a school setting that barely means anything, that limits customization, and that doesn't much influence the narrative. For most of the game, there isn't really a plot at all. And while for some that can be very freeing, I find the experience lacking. And it doesn't mean we get any less boring dissertations of dialogue. The gym leaders still feel like they don't matter. The Elite Four and Champion feel like they don't matter. In fact, they're really lame in this game. Everything then rests on the shoulders of Penny, Arven, and Nimona, but before you get to know anything about these guys, you have to trudge through 20 hours of story beats so threadbare that Sonic Frontiers feels right at home. I cannot leave this merely implied. This battle system, for the first time in a long time, felt incredibly slow and unexciting. Text boxes feel like they last for way too long. Animations and framing are boring. The camera is unreliable, specifically when you can't control it, which is kind of funny. When you switch out a Pokemon, you have to wait an extra beat for the opponent to do like a taunting animation. The loading pause when a battle begins and ends feels annoyingly sluggish. There's some whiplash going from the sharpness and responsiveness of Persona 5 Royal to whatever the fuck Violet is, and like the battles are demonstrably worse now because of all the camera bugs. The camera jitters constantly, even for scripted battles, and sometimes characters will do this thing where they twist after throwing out a Pokeball or calling a Pokemon back. Not to mention all the shots that clip out of bounds. Again, even with the scripted cameras. I went back to Sword and Shield for footage and did the Galarian Star Tournament, and man, does that game look and feel better in every single way. And then there's terastallizing. It sucks. All it does is change the element of any given Pokemon and give them a bigger bonus when they use a move of the same element. Oh, and every Pokemon gets a stupid fucking hat based on their element. In a vacuum, maybe this is a fine addition, but we have to remember that terastallizing comes at the cost of Mega Evolutions, which were cooler, Z-moves, which were cooler, and Gigantamax. Even that was cooler. I remember finding Grimmsnarl in Violet, the little devil Pokemon, and thinking, oh wait, I'll never get to see that cool Gigantamax form of yours again. That sucks. Also, I'll put it bluntly, Terra Raids suck ass. For some insane reason, in a turn-based battle system with this much clunk and lag, they decided to go with a real-time time limit for Terra Raid battles. One benefit of this design choice is that everyone can attack at the same time, which makes everything feel faster, but it's all so chaotic. Pokemon are dying, getting paralyzed and burned, or falling asleep, and the teammate health bars don't update in real time, so it's impossible to tell what's causing what or what's going on at any given time. It's a huge mess, and there seem to be glitches where the player menu will refresh and not highlight the last move you did, or where the raid Pokemon will do extra moves after its health bar has been depleted. And it's impossible to tell when people are going to use certain moves. Like, you don't get to see an action timer for them. And with computer players, it sometimes seems like they will never move until you move, which sometimes you just can't because, like, you're dead or something. I just don't understand why you would use a real-time timer and have the timer keep ticking down even when you have no control over the battle. That means you get penalized for taking moves that have extra effects. You get penalized for terastallizing. And if you're like paralyzed and confused, forget it. And still, we see a lack of real evolution of the Pokemon battle formula. Terastallizing is a gimmick. Oh, look at this Sudowoodo. It's not really a tree, but now it really is a tree. Bear in mind, this could also have been accomplished with like Mega Evolution. Sudowoodo would have a badass Mega Evolution form, like some giant oak tree or some shit. Other than that, it's the same old Pokemon battles, but somehow feeling more sluggish than ever. Arceus was a half step above this, and it was decent, but compared to Arceus, Scarlet and Violet have changed staggeringly little. There's no sense of real strategy or tactics to be found outside of PvP, and apparently even that's broken, so as always, we have one double battle gym leader and like 3 multi-battles, and even then, the only real strategy is to spam super effective moves. There could have been a great opportunity to emphasize team play through multi-battles in this game, especially since the game literally has your friends run around with you in Area 0 at the end. Maybe you could come against some difficult bosses and pre-plan who's going to be your multi-battle partner as you take yourself through the increasingly difficult area. Dare I say it, something like Persona 5, or Dragon Age, or Mass Effect, or Final Fantasy. Then it would create more opportunities for team building with these admittedly charming characters. I've done some online battles back in Ultra Sun and Moon, before Dexit killed my hopes and dreams. So I know how robust and fun this battle system can be when you're up against a really good opponent and using a team that you handcrafted to accentuate their strengths and mitigate their weaknesses. So it's so weird that the base game is almost devoid of any of that. You can faithfully use the same strategies from like Ruby and Sapphire in this game and hardly be able to tell the difference. This is where I want to briefly talk about the multiplayer. One of the draws of the multiplayer is that you're supposed to be able to see your friends' battles in the open world. This worked for me a total of 1 time. The multiplayer is so bare bones. It seems like basically the only 2 things you can really do with your friends are raid battles and picnics. But I couldn't even sit at the table. I couldn't kick the ball. I couldn't even eat my friend's sandwich. Quick update. Apparently you can make sandwiches together, but by this point we were so bored we never figured out how to do it. My friend and I were at drastically different levels, so the raid battles were either so difficult as to be impossible or absurdly easy. Aside from that, we were stumped. There was no multi-battling. I couldn't help him take on trainers or catch Pokemon, which was a feature in Let's Go, by the way. I couldn't help him with the Team Star Challenge either. I couldn't even see his Team Star Challenge, except that on my screen, he was just standing in the middle of a base and battling nothing, doing all his animations and shit, like throwing out his Pokemon, but nothing would show up. And apparently on his screen, I was gone, but he did see my floating balls in his face.
You can see the Pokeball? Oh my god,
The most depressing thing, and one I feel is truly unforgivable, is that you can't watch your friends' gym battles. Each city has a battle court where the gym challenge takes place. I waited at the battle court, my friend challenged the gym, and it felt like I got the wrong address to the party. If I were making this game and adding multiplayer, that would be the premier feature I'd advertise. Cheer on your friends during their gym battles. The mechanic already exists with raid battles and the ghost gym leader, so they would just need to make it work in open world settings, but this was truly depressing. You can't even enter indoors locations with your friends. I guess they're instanced to only work in single player settings, but that sucks. Although, maybe it's for the best given the glitches I've already mentioned. But I can't bring my friend to my dorm room. When my friend flies away, they just disappear from my screen and I have to fumble around to find them again. Sometimes, in fact, most of the time, when they enter a battle, it looks like they're just standing there. And again, no multi-battles in the open world. Even if I challenge the same trainer that they are fighting, I can't help out at all. It sucks. One of the new mechanics in Scarlet and Violet is throwing out Pokemon in the open world and watching them auto-battle roaming Pokemon. It's fine, I guess. I thought it'd be a cool way to grind, but the EXP rewards are paltry, and the calculation for who wins or loses doesn't seem to take into account the moves that your Pokemon has or how fast they are. Plus, the AI is so fucking dumb. Your Pokemon will sometimes ignore enemies right next to you and won't travel all that far on its own. Plus, when my friend and I were playing together, my Glimora seemed to completely stop checking for enemies, so my friend and I couldn't clear out the area together. The gym buildings look so plain and boring. Fuck modern architecture, I swear. The towns have some character to them, but this isn't like Red Dead Redemption 2 levels of immersion. For the most part, you go into a town, hit the clothes shops, do the gym, and then never go back. Or maybe that's just me. None of these towns or cities felt special at all, and since I couldn't even change my fucking uniform, I stopped caring about the clothes shops pretty quickly. Sometimes the shop entrances glitch the fuck out for no reason. And while there are finally walk cycles for the people in the towns, try again Pokemon Arceus, sometimes the people spawn inside each other, because of course they do, and the walk cycles are so funny. The characters will approach the city limits and then just turn around like, whoops! Speaking of which, you don't get to see anyone walking anywhere in the open world, only in the towns. You don't see anyone battling each other, and I just found a few interesting Pokemon behaviors, like these Hoppips apparently getting scared of the rain and flying off. But taken in totality, if bad cameras, sluggish gameplay, shitty multiplayer, and a bland world are the price to pay for Pokemon open world, then no thanks. Not everything needs to be open world. It doesn't inherently make a game better. It doesn't inherently make a game worse, but it does inherently influence the pacing and punch of narrative and gameplay moments. One of the big draws of Pokemon Violet is that you can tackle the game in any order you like. And sure, maybe that's fun if you like lazy narrative design, but it also makes level balancing a real tricky thing. I spent both of my playthroughs either really struggling or overpowering and one-shotting everything. There was rarely a point where the game balance felt just right. During my first playthrough with Dominic, I accidentally sequence broke the game, getting to the main city of Mesagosa before completing the tutorial with Nemona. I managed to do this because the game said open world, so I went open fucking world. When you start a Pokemon battle, the game needs to move you into place, so if you start a battle with a Pokemon that's on a cliff above you, say a cliff that you aren't meant to be able to climb just yet, you will be teleported to the top of the cliff. It's all good though, because they helped me, then I paid it forward by helping some Pokemon get back from out of bounds in my second playthrough. One hand scratches the other. Now the game still hard locks you out of a lot of content, so I don't think this would be useful in a speed run or anything. You can't do the gyms or any of the Titan or Team Star stuff early or anything like that. And it made the game very boring. Or rather, more boring. But it did mean that I could catch high-level pokes and power level all my Pokemon to 50 before even stepping foot in the school. I could also unlock easy fast travel, which still just has a fucking loading screen with no interesting animations. Persona 5 always has an animation of the character interacting with the world, or at least has cooler loading transitions. But here, we get the laziest 2-frame sprite on a black screen. At least there's no dead pixel this time, I guess. You can't lay on your bed or sit on benches. And to the uninitiated, it'll sound like I'm just nitpicking or making shit up, but you could do that back in Pokemon Sun and Moon on the 3DS. It helps with making the player feel like part of the world, like their room is really theirs and not just a glorified fade-out switch. Red Dead 2, Persona 5, Death Stranding, these games and many others take pride in the little animations that make the world feel like more than just a backdrop. But Scarlet and Violet and the last few Pokemon open world experiences have sacrificed the intimate and immersive for the sake of pursuing quantity over quality. Going through the game how I did my first time through, not being able to interact with anything except the trainers and roaming Pokemon, was a dreary experience. Of course, that's not really the game's fault, except that I glitched it by accident, so I guess it kind of is the game's fault. But it really laid bare how difficult it is for the open world and battle system alone to hold up this game. Some people find an immense sense of freedom and goodness in the ability to run around and see the Pokemon shambling around at 3 FPS 15 feet away. I disagree, and I have some evidence to support my argument. Pokemon are very small. Save for the Titan Pokemon, of which there are only 5, Pokemon are usually not much bigger than the player, especially if the player is mounted. I'm not sure how faithful Violet and Scarlet are to the actual Pokemon sizes listed in the Pokedex. I mean, we already know what the 3D Pokemon games did to Wailord, but I hate the fact that we can never see Pokemon in their actual sizes, especially since Gigantamax is a thing now. I would really like to see a Wailord being an actual freaking Wailord. Ooh, seeing this image makes me actually mad. But the camera, even when zoomed in, keeps the player very small on the screen. As a result of this, sometimes the Pokemon can appear so small while traveling the world that you'll bump into them without even noticing that they were there. This, among other things, including the frame rate, makes me feel like Pokemon would be better served to much more intimate environments. Denser, not wider. But that doesn't mean it has to be a hallway like previous 3D Pokemon routes. It can be a big, wide open area filled with roaming Pokemon and secret locations, but with the concentration and density of a linear game. Remember The Last of Us Part 2, when Ellie and Dina first get to Washington? That map is big, it's wide, but it's also deeply filled with interesting moments and strong environmental storytelling. It's not really open world, but it gives you the illusion of that while giving you very dense and concentrated environmental stories. Clearly, Game Freak can't handle open worlds. They previewed it with Sword and Shield, they proved it with Arceus, and they've driven it home with Scarlet and Violet. Save for Area Zero, the world feels incredibly barren and uninteresting, and there are really weird glitches that pop up, like this one where apparently the lighting in certain areas is affected by the HUD lighting surrounding the terrestrialized text. This is silly. Come on, guys. This is unacceptable in a AAA game. But when they made these games open world, it's not just the technical quality that suffers. It's the map design. It's the narrative. It's the AI and scenario design. It's the world building. As I've said in my Sword and Shield video, and then again with Arceus, Pokemon needs to get better at using the Pokemon and these interesting scenarios to tell strong stories through the environment, the same way that the movies do. Scarlet and Violet does a better job of including the Pokemon in the story. Miraidon is a lil cutie. I love it. And small gestures like the player character petting it during Arven's cutscene is really nice. But there's still a lack of strong environmental storytelling. There are 4 mythic Pokemon around the open world, but they're not in like any cool locations or dens or areas of any real significance. They're just in these like magic sewer pipes in 4 random insignificant places around the map. And you can't just organically stumble upon these Pokemon. It's not like finding a really cool boss in Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild. Instead, you run and jump around the map trying to find 8 colored stakes in the ground to unlock each gate. 8 stakes, each for 4 gates. That's 32 stakes you need to essentially collect just to uncover all the legendaries. It's this collectathon bullshit that plagued Dragon Age Inquisition in like every Ubisoft game, and now the modern Pokemon games. Find the 5 Titans, defeat the 5 Team Star leaders, collect 8 gym badges, remove 32 stakes, turn on 4 research stations. Nemona even remarks how video gamey it sounds, because it is. It's the worst thing about open world design in like Arkham Knight, because the moment you do one cool thing, you know you're gonna have to do it 3 more times. It's not freeing, it's a chore, and it makes the open world feel like more of a checklist than a world worthy of experiencing and getting lost in. I'm looking at you, Dragon Age Inquisition.
Do this thing X amount of times and then you can move on. It's the same exact thing for almost every mission, every encounter, every time you want to progress the storyline. It's the same bullshit, tedious nonsense.
Good maps tell stories, and as much shit as I give to Fallout 4 and Skyrim, at least they're good at that, weaving together narrative and environment. In Sword and Shield, and again in Arceus, and again in Scarlet and Violet, there's nothing interesting to encounter or experience that hasn't been marked on your map. There are no cool stories or paths to uncover just by exploring the world on your own. The worst aspect of this is what it does to the narrative. Arvin and Penny are actually good characters, and even though Nemona has one note and one note only, even she shines a little by the time you reach Area 0. But you don't get to see most of that characterization until the end of the game, and the weird time travel narrative both starts and finishes in the last 2 hours of the main story. The post-game story is paltry. You participate in a tournament, which is not anywhere near as good or as fleshed out as the multi-battle Galarian Star tournament from Sword and Shield. And before anyone says, oh, but it was DLC, fuck you. They've been developing this game for fucking years. They could have put it in the game. They knew that the Galarian Star tournament exists, for Christ's sake. Anyway, after the tournament, you then get to talk to Penny, Arvin, and Nemona a little bit, and then get to visit their dorm rooms. Why did I have to wait the whole game for this? It's nice, it's cool, I like it, but it's hardly a prize after damn near 30 hours of monotony. I thought there was going to be some cool scene in their dorm room where you get to battle them or they give you a special item or something like that. Maybe, I don't know, a new outfit, for fuck's sake. Inviting friends over in Persona, playing video games with them in your room, or meeting them at the hideout feels good because the whole game is built around that social interaction, and you really start loving these characters and their personal struggles. You don't love the struggle. You love watching them. You love interacting with the struggle and helping them through their struggle. You don't want to see them struggle. You don't want the struggle. The struggle is real. Pokemon Violet flirts with that idea, but the shitty pacing and lackluster effort doesn't even place it in the same league as Persona 4 or 5. Those are the only ones I played. The ending of Pokemon Violet, meaning the final cutscene where Penny, Arvin, and Nemona are walking across a field talking about taking the long way home, feels like the ending to a game I barely got to play. The game wasn't about 4 friends going on a huge adventure together. That was just like the last 2 hours. And again, it was the best 2 hours, but let's not pretend that this was some big emotional journey we all took together. I barely got to see these assholes, and it leads to some frustrations too, like why does Nemona's insane wealth and privilege only get brought up like twice in 2 totally missable dialogue interactions? And why does Penny pretend like she never stepped foot in the art room? Penny, you're right there! I can see you, you lying jerk! Penny's final cutscenes are the cutest because she's worried about her old team fitting in at school, and it shows a lot of character. The worst part about it is that Team Star, on the whole, sucks ass. Their character designs are doing all the heavy lifting. When you beat each leader, you get some boring ass flashback of all the leaders just standing around talking about how hard they're trying to prove themselves against the bullies or whatever, but you don't get to see anything interesting. This is a good time to mention the events in this game are so unbelievably dull. They are fucking awful. To be clear, I don't mean the fully animated cutscenes with unique animations and properly timed scoring and whatnot. Those are pretty nice and have always been pretty nice in every Pokemon game. No complaints there. But the majority of cutscenes are not that. It's usually just unskippable text box after unskippable text box with a bunch of dudes just standing around. No good framing or shot composition. Nothing interesting is happening or even being said most of the time. No cool backdrops. Visual novel format would have been more compelling. In Persona 5, even when characters are just standing around, the environments are more interesting. The scenarios are more interesting. There's usually voice acting, and there are cutaways and animations and the occasional meaningful dialogue choice. And hey, look, there's even a button to fucking fast forward. I do really like the concept of Penny's arc with Team Star, but the execution is so exhaustingly bland. Arvin feels like the real main character of this whole thing, but you don't get a sense for his role in anything until the end of the game. And Nemona, oh, Nemona. I like Nemona. She's not as annoying as Hop or Hal, but not as compelling as Bede or Marnie. She just loves battling. She loves battling, and that is the only thing you need to know about her. Her big post-game realization is like, hey, I turn a lot of people off because I'm so good at battling and not everyone likes it as much as I do. So, you know what? I'm just gonna battle even harder. It's so stupid. Again, this is the happiest, go luckiest, most saccharine Pokemon game where everyone except Grusha, I guess, lives consequence free. Where bullying solves itself and the adults and institution that let it happen don't actually have to deal with it. Where children can leave school forever to go on a fucking treasure hunt with no clear goal and just take classes or not take classes whenever they want to. Where giant Pokemon escape from the future but mostly keep to themselves and don't really bother anyone or terrorize towns or anything because that's too hard to build a game around. Where single dads can neglect their children to go off and build time machines, but when it turns out that dad was actually a robot most of the time, everything was hunky-dory. Where adults abuse their power to get children's cell phone numbers without permission and invite themselves to those kids' dorm rooms. Really weird shit, Gita. It's a game with a weird time travel twist that's totally unearned but takes you to the best location in the game, with characters who are potentially really great but with no voice acting or strong narrative get very little time to shine. This is a game whose world I wish was 5 times smaller, a game that's self-aware, that thinks it's clever and occasionally is, more than Arceus anyway, a game which, in my opinion, fails to do anything worthy, anything above and beyond what any previous Pokemon game has done. It's a game that'll get called ambitious because it chased an open world trend that it's been chasing for years now, despite doing almost nothing to justify itself or expand on the concept. It's a game that, despite its unacceptable flaws and uninspired design, will ultimately get the pass anyway because at least it's still Pokemon. And that makes me sad. Really, really sad. What's up with people just barging into your room or house? I'm the main character, only I can do that. Except anything that's not a shop or a gym building in this game seems to just be a prop. You can't actually enter buildings in this game. Even the Pokemon Center is just like an outpost, which is so lame. Nemona barges into your room twice, Gita invites herself into your room, and the school director barges into your house, and I'm pretty sure he's having an affair with my mom.
Hell yeah, I'll drink your tea, you hot piece of ass. Get over here.
Anyway, memes aside, I want to emphasize again that the bugs and performance issues are only part of the problem here. And unfortunately, seeing as how Scarlet and Violet are selling gangbusters despite clear, objective flaws, I don't think these games are ever going to change. These problems were in Pokemon Arceus. These problems were in Sword and Shield, and so many people chose to ignore them because, hey, it's still Pokemon, right? The last 4 Pokemon games were horrendously rushed to release. These latest ones are just the continuation of that trend, and on a fundamental level, these games are just not as great as people imagine them to be. To call Scarlet and Violet ambitious is to be an insult to God of War, Breath of the Wild, Elden Ring, Red Dead Redemption 2, Death Stranding, technical masterpieces like The Last of Us Part 2, which I don't even like, by the way. And there are so many other games I haven't played because I'm a dirty, stinky casual that deserve the spotlight way more than Pokemon Scarlet and Violet or Arceus. I love Pokemon. I grew up playing Pokemon. I'm still hurting from Dexit, and I won't truly recover until they bring every Pokemon back for future releases. I want nothing more than to have a Pokemon game that reignites the magic that captivated me from my childhood and well into my adulthood. I want a game that I'd be proud to play with my niece or my cousin or my children if I'm ever a dad someday. But the simple truth is that I've changed. The world has changed. Video games have changed, but Pokemon hasn't. It's still the same machine. It still occupies the same familiar and comfortable space it's enjoyed since it first got built decades ago. And we keep coming back, refusing to leave it behind or drag it along to the future with us because despite its oxidizing shell growing cold with each passing year, we can look upon its frame shining pale and desperately between the edges of the coarse brown splotches all over and say, hey, at least it's still Pokemon. Hey everyone, I had like a whole other thing recorded, a whole other outro recorded for this video. And you know, in the process of making this video, I was just so exhausted. I was really struggling to get through this one. I think this might be the last Pokemon game I plan to cover on my channel. I actually didn't plan to cover Scarlet and Violet until it like actually came out, and then I was like, oh, this is real. I should probably do this. People are gonna want to follow up. But I think this is the last Pokemon game I'm gonna plan to cover. You know, as I said in the video, Pokemon is a part of me. I love it as a concept. I've grown up with the franchise, and I just want to see it good. I want to see the magic return, and I'm still, part of me is still holding out hope that that'll happen. But getting through this video was super exhausted, not just because of the length of the video or the games themselves, but because of the audience reaction to it. I kept hearing and seeing, I didn't watch any videos about the games except for like a few about some of the bugs. Now, I didn't watch any like bug compilation videos or anything like that, but I watched one Yang Ye video about like the seed bug for like critical hits and stuff like that. I haven't watched any analysis videos on it or anything because I wanted to keep my ideas fresh, but I've been seeing in the thumbnails, I've been hearing like here and there, people in my personal life even who was like, oh, I one of the best things about the game is that you don't have to think about it. And it depressed me. It depressed me so much when I thought about, where I came from on this channel. I started critiquing Final Fantasy 13 on this channel. I had another one before. I don't even remember what it's called. But on this channel, I started critiquing Final Fantasy 13. And then I moved on to critiquing Naruto Storm games and a bunch of other games too. And I've always been sort of the quietest voice in the room, not just in terms of size, but also in terms of, I'm railing against something that's massively popular. People largely don't agree with me, and it's evidenced by the fact that these games are selling like hotcakes. They're very popular. They generally get very good ratings on these, review sites or whatever. And very few people talk about the issues with them. I realize that I'm still in that space, and I don't want to be in that space anymore. I want to move on to talking about games that I actually like or I'm conflicted by, like A Plague Tale Requiem. I played through it. I did enjoy my experience with it, but I'm very conflicted on how that story panned out, and I haven't really had time to think about it or process it. So that's something I want to do for a future video, I think. Is to like really sit down with that game, play it through again, and really think about where my feelings lie with it. Things like that, where I'm not just angry, but I'm like trying to figure things out. the Death Stranding video on Black Book, 2 positive games that I want to cover. I've been wanting for the longest time to pivot my channel into more of an analysis, more of a positive look into games, and maybe even throwing some literary analysis in there as I've been doing a little bit. And I'm getting there. But, if I still have to keep coming back to the latest Pokemon game, the most topical game, to explore it and talk about it, then and it's not always going to be a fun case where I get an early copy of Sonic Frontiers and I actually end up enjoying the game a little bit. It's not always going to be like that. Like, I don't want to have to jump on the most topical game. I don't want to have to be the angry voice in the room talking about, oh, this isn't really as good as you think it is, guys. That doesn't mean I'm going to neuter my opinion. I'm not going to neuter my opinion for anyone, but it was depressing. Getting through this video was really depressing, and it made me feel like I'm really never going to get that magical Pokemon experience again, because no one else wants it. No one else wants that. They are perfectly complacent with what we have now, and I think that's shitty, and I am tired of fighting that battle. I've lost the war, it feels like, and I think I'm ready to wave the white flag. So that said, working on a lot of stuff, a lot of my own artistic endeavors that maybe suck just as bad as Pokemon Scarlet and Violet do. We'll see. If you would like to support me in that, I will have a link to my Ko-Fi page in the link tree in the comments below. I will also have a link to other stuff you can find of mine, like music, and my Flower Girl storybook that I wrote for kids. And I'm working on Flower Girl too, but I haven't had the money to actually work with my illustrator on it. She's not my illustrator, but to work with an illustrator on it. So yeah, but I am working on some other stuff. Soul Calibur 6 story called The Immortal Soul, the script for which should be finished by the end of this year. I've already talked to some of my friends and some other people about voice acting. If you or someone you know would like to maybe voice act in it, unpaid, unfortunately, I don't have the funds to, I'm not financially secure enough to be able to pay people to voice act, so it would just be a passion project. But if you are interested in that, you can find my email in the link tree in the description below. At least I think that's how that works. If not, then I'll put the email on the screen. What else? I'm working on that Dreams 2.0 update. If you haven't played if you have Dreams on PS4 or PS5 and you would like to play the game that I made, it's called Waning, Waning, and it's people seem to really like it. I'm working on the 2.0 update, which is it's turned into a bigger project than I thought it would be. It's kind of overhauling the graphics and everything and some of the AI, which I didn't want to get into, but I've been having fun with it, so here we are. So you can play that on Dreams. I think it's good. If I can learn how to code and animate and stuff like that, I eventually want to make it into an actual PC game at some point, but that's like a future project. I've got lint all over my fingernails. Jesus Christ. That's pretty much it for now. I think I'm done. I think I said everything I needed to say. I'm not done playing Pokemon by a long shot, but again, I think this is the last one I'm going to plan to cover. And I'm going to come back strong in the new year with some bangers, some hotcakes, some games I actually really want to talk about. Some games either I really like, or I'm conflicted on and want to process, or maybe I'm just confused by. Maybe games that I just don't understand. I just want to have that kind of dialogue there. So it's definitely gonna do Black Book. I think that's gonna be the first thing I do, but when the new year arrives, and then Death Stranding video, which I'm not even anywhere near done with, but I think that's gonna be the next thing I do after Black Book. And then maybe a Plague Tale down the line, which is, I'm kind of sad that a Plague Tale didn't win any awards, because I think it deserves something, maybe like best soundtrack, but award shows are stupid classist lies anyway. Thank you for the amazing support this year. I appreciate it, and anyone watching this video, I really appreciate it. Again, if you have the means and would like to support me on Ko-Fi so I can do this artistic stuff even more, I would appreciate it. It's kind of amazing that I've been doing this I've been on YouTube for like 10 years ish, you know, I still have a day job, and I'm like looking for more work, but I've been really, you know, putting my all into this YouTube thing, and some people have really responded to it, and you know, I appreciate that. I could have very well, after 10 years, still been stuck at, you know, 100 subscribers or whatever. And you know, I don't really care about the numbers, but and I make this stuff because I like it. But seeing that reaction, seeing that feedback, seeing that people are, you know, responding to it is nice. It's validating, and I very much appreciate that. So I hope you guys have had a better year than me. I had a difficult year, romance problems, friend problems. I got ghosted a shit ton this year. And I had some health problems as well, not to mention I quit teaching. I quit substitute teaching. So I have my master's degree in education now, but I am no longer teaching, which brings a whole host of problems. Yeah, it's just been a tough year. I'm almost 30, and it's you know, quarter life crisis mode in full swing. I'm trying to figure out my shit and, you know, where I belong in this world. And so I, again, appreciate the support. I appreciate the validation you guys bring to me. I hope you guys have had a better year than me. And, you know, onwards and upwards, hopefully. Hopefully we're going upwards after this. But yeah, take care, everyone. Happy holidays. Get some good rest, eat a lot, sleep a lot, fuck a lot, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.